Hello, everyone. This is Permission to Brag, episode 2. I'm your host, Daniel Leal Bruce, and today I am joined with a dear friend of mine, with Maria Mendez Hennig. I actually refer to her as Ria, so I guess the first question here, before I let you officially introduce yourself, can I know this is gonna go on LinkedIn, but is Ria okay? Should we keep it professional? Maria, what do you prefer here?
That's a fun question that I always love to answer. All of my friends can always call me Ria. In the workplace, I do prefer that people call me by my full name, Maria. And I think I had, growing up, a little bit of a tough time learning to love my name. And now that I do absolutely love it in the workplace, I do like to be referred to as Maria. But, if you see me outside, if we're friends, you can always call me Ria. But for the sake of this interview, since um, I'm talking with you and we're old friends. Ria is perfect.
Awesome, awesome. So, this is English as a second language question, but I don't know if you can relate. Do you ever catch yourself wanting to say your name the way you said it when you first learned it, Maria, or when you're speaking English, does it just naturally always flow as Maria?
I think it depends on my setting, and it's something that I've been trying to catch. Because if I am with people that I know don't speak Spanish, I will go the American route and be like, "Hi, Maria Mendez Henning." But when I am around, I don't know, maybe a little bit more Spanish folk, I do go by Maria Mendez Henning, how it is intended to be. And growing up, my parents always really wanted me to hold a lot of pride in my name. So it's been something that I'm like, okay, now that I'm entering my 30s, yeah, it's Maria.
You have the Spanish guitar there. Awesome. So, yeah, Ria, if it's okay with you, I would love for you to give a snapshot of who you are, and be free to start that wherever you want. So obviously this is a professional show, but yeah, who are you? Where are you from? How'd you get here? Give us the whole take in like a few seconds. Go.
Yeah, my name is, well, I already said that. My name is Maria. I was born in Venezuela, but raised in Miami, which gave me a beautiful bilingual culture to grow up around in. And West Kendall has a lot of Hispanic pride, so that was something really beautiful to grow up with. Studied accounting in Florida State. Had originally entered with a journalism major and somehow ended up switching to accounting because I love to challenge myself. And I had done a lot of journalism in high school in my earlier years, and really wanted to learn something completely different out of the blue. I'd started my career in Atlanta with Deloitte. Worked for a few firms now that after I moved to North Carolina. I've done technical accounting consulting. I've done technical accounting for the Vans in the North Face. I really loved working with them here in North Carolina. And then I tried my shot out at recruiting for a couple months last year. And now I find myself in this new position to kind of take in all of these experiences that I have and do something new in the future, which is kind of a little bit of a dynamic place to be in. But I'm excited to kind of take in all of those qualities that I mentioned with you, my experience back in journalism, the love that I have for communicating with people, my experience in social media and content creation, and then the 7 years that I spent grinding it out in the accounting world. Um, and I find myself, yeah, here looking for the next opportunity.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, so a lot to unpack there, which is great. So I'm actually gonna take it from sort of one of the last few things you mentioned there, which was your social media presence. When I first got to know you, you had this pretty active page that made pretty much anyone jealous about not having this phenomenal hair that we are all seeing here today. So let's start with that. Like, how would you say running your own social media, growing and becoming an influencer, and how do you see that having shaped the way that you approach your career and all the other things you just mentioned?
Yeah, I really loved being able to try and do that balance while I was working in the audit space and before I became a consultant. because once I moved into the consulting world, there's strict stipulations of not being able to have a presence online, which is why I initially had stopped that a couple years ago. But I really found a lot of warmth and acceptance in being able to speak to a community of people that I didn't know, about some of my deepest insecurities, which were at the time, you know, my hair, how I looked in the professional workspace. I was one of the few Hispanics in this office of about 450 audit individuals. Everybody around me, for the most part, looked the same within each other. And it was a little bit of me that stood out. And I tried to, in the beginning of my career, really change myself to try and fit into the mold of other people, to be like, okay, this is what an accountant looks like. Like, how can I be that way? That kind of pushed along my name narrative. When I first started my career at Deloitte, I would always went by Ria because I thought that would be more acceptable to everybody. My hair, as soon as I entered the workforce, was super straight. It was actually blonde at that time. And I just thought that shedding these layers of my Hispanic self would make the work somehow better or easier and people accept me more. And being able to start discussing that online in a way that felt honest, not attacking any side or anything, helped me really come into myself. And I think gave me a lot more confidence in my job and my career field. So while I was using it as something kind of fun and to showcase people, like, look at my journey, here's where I'm changing with hair, it did have a deeper connotation of me growing with this page and growing self-love and acceptance and having that reflected into my career. Um, because I think approaching things from an authentic perspective as to who you are will bring in the absolute best results. So I knew that I had a lot of friction in the beginning of my career. And I think it's because I was fighting myself with what I thought I should be. And that page really helped me open up and, share with other people who were kind of stuck in the same ways or thought that they had to change the way they look or talked or presented themselves to fit a certain career path.
That's awesome. That's refreshing to hear. I remember, I am also from Venezuela, and I remember when my family moved to the States over 20 years ago, even though we were in South Florida, we were in Boca, and it wasn't quite diverse yet. So, uh, the things you mentioned about having to straighten your hair, being blonde, I actually didn't know you had a blonde face. It's it's interesting. A lot of people don't realize how, especially when you're young, trying to integrate into a new culture, you're really going to the extreme sometimes, and you lose your sense of self. So, love the fact that through this page, you were able to not just help find your voice again, and but also be able to help other people. I'm sure that we're seeing that, and that was reflected on them as well. And it's phenomenal. Also, the fact that it helped you in the workplace is particularly interesting to me because I think, especially, this is going to go on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is one of those social medias where people are always trying to put on a facade and trying to be this thing that they're not, what they think the world wants to see. But what you showed here is that the moment you put yourself out in your most genuine self, that's where you could show up in the workplace at your best. So that's a phenomenal lesson right there. So thanks for sharing that. Now, I do want to bring it back to that professional career. You did mention that you originally were in school for journalism, and somewhere along the line, you became an accountant. So, what were the things that inspired you to want to make that transition? What were the qualities that maybe you did learn from journalism that you saw were able to translate nicely to your accounting role?
Yeah, I think the decision, I wasn't 100% sure why I was doing that when I was that age. But I think looking back on it now, communication, because journalism is part of a communication, I think comes into play in every career field. And I did notice that when I got to the workplace, people in the accounting space sometimes had a little bit of a harder time doing that, whether that's communicating criticism, communicating information to clients, communicating with new staff, young adults, or speaking up for yourself. I think communication kind of came into play in all those aspects. I think when I originally made the choice to go into accounting, I saw myself maybe taking a journalism career that would eventually lead in sort of financial journalism. And then once I got into it, like a good old immigrant, I got a little scared of kind of jumping out and doing my own thing in a world that wasn't so secure. I really saw a lot of stability in accounting. And I hold nothing against myself for making that decision at the age that I did for the reasons that I did, to support myself, to get a little more stability in my life in the meantime. I do think that as I'm in this phase where I'm able to look back on everything and analyze those things, that is something that I do want to bring back into my life and somehow incorporate it, whether it is with the new career that I choose to do or whether it is my passion project on the side. I do think journalism will always be a part of me, because I think it's just in my everyday self and person. I love communicating with people. I will talk to every stranger on the street. I am somebody's elevator's worst nightmare because I'm going to talk to you and we're going to have small talk whether you want to or not. And I'm not going to ask you about the weather. I think that's just embedded in my personality. So I would love a career that I can utilize those skills a little bit, as well as my financial knowledge. But I know that no matter what, I think it's always going to be a part of my life.
That's phenomenal. That is one thing that I hope and I foresee will be coming up over and over in this show, which is that the things we learn along the way we carry to the next thing. And a lot of people, especially in our age where we're trying to figure out what our career path will look like, we're making jumps, we're figuring things out. And often people uh, feel afraid that they spent X amount of years in accounting and now they want to make a jump to a completely different career and thinking, oh my God, I just wasted those 3 years. And it's quite the opposite. It's like there's so many skills that were gained during that time period they're only going to make you a better professional in whatever it is that you do. So
Yeah.
thank you for that.
It, it's just to piggyback off of that a little bit, it's really important to listen to yourself in those moments because a lot of the outside noise can encourage you to stay and do, not an easy route, but something that you're comfortable doing. So in those times, if anybody is in that position, like really leaning into your gut, if something feels scary, that's where you end up growing. We're in our 30s, like our brains are kind of at that point where you have to push it to develop. It's not going to do it on its own. So doing things that are scary, doing things that are outside of your comfort zone is the key to kind of growing in this next stage in our lives. So I challenge people to lean into that feeling, to be scared, to be in a position of the unknown, because I think only good can come from that.
Amen. Amen to that. So, okay, going through your career timeline. So we did accounting, and your next role would go on to be in recruiting, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So can you tell me more about that shift and going to the themes that we've explored here? Like, what it was specifically for accounting as well, right? Or I'll let you do the talking.
Yeah. So while I was in my consulting role, I've always worked really closely with a recruiter here in town. And I felt a calling to make a change. I just didn't know where to take it. And doing something that was accounting adjacent seemed like a nice first step into stepping out into the world of a new career. I'm happy that I made that step. I really enjoyed seeing a different kind of working environment. Um, and it did take a little bit of a leap of faith. I don't necessarily think that I was suited for the role of recruiting specifically in the accounting space, but I really love the opportunity to learn something new, to see what a different kind of schedule could look like, and integrating all that I learned from that career into something next. So I really like that that helped me take the first little step. And after doing that first little step, I'm like, okay, let's try something completely different. Let's see how much further we can take it. I'm glad that I tried this and necessarily wasn't for me. But let's see what's next. And for me, being laid off in the space that I did try that new career, I think in that first moment, that felt to me like, oh my God, I'm a failure. That's crazy. I've always done a good job. I've always gotten straight A's. I was a great student. I've gotten all the jobs that I applied for. So this was the first time that I felt some sort of rejection or pushback onto something that I was doing. I've always been really prideful of my work. But I'm so happy that that happened because I really do think it pushed me into the next sphere. I don't necessarily think of it as a failure anymore. It was just trying something new, and seeing how I can use those skills to better suit me for the next position.
Got it. I love that you brought that up. The concept of, you know, the pressure we put on ourselves, and really a big reason why I want this show to be a thing is because chances are, if you're in the professional world, you will experience a layoff in your career, and we are so accustomed at the way, especially here in the education system, to believe that if we do all the work the way we're supposed to, we are going to be rewarded. And that's it. And anything other than a reward means that we didn't do the work correctly. So we will immediately internalize it, being like, oh my God, I must have failed. So it's such a common experience, which I've experienced it myself too. When you get laid off, the first questions you ask are like, where did I go wrong? Did I fail? And sometimes it's just not the case. It's the classic, uh, you can put a fish in a tree and it'll die instantly because that's not the right setting for that creature to thrive and exist. So you did mention earlier, you were talking about the importance at this time of our lives in our early 30s to really go out of the comfort zone and jump into those opportunities that might seem crazy at times. And now that you are in this phase of looking for the next opportunity, I imagine that you're feeling all sorts of things. So I'm curious, how are you balancing that uncertainty in this phase? How are you able to keep it between excitement and stress? What are you doing, like, physically and emotionally,
Yeah.
to navigate this?
Yeah. I would say it's definitely been a little bit of a challenge to figure out, but I've honestly thought of the layoff almost as like a reward because I was kind of able to take a look at my life and see, while I'm looking for a job, what do I want to add? What do I want to work on? What can I do for myself during this time that can also benefit me, whether it is for my career or not? So, this is crazy to admit, but in the last like 6 months, well, it's been 4 months. In the last 4 months, I taught myself how to cook. I've really enjoyed and loved working on like really intense recipes. As someone who didn't know how to cook, I didn't know that I would love spending 2 to 3 hours or 4 hours making something. I've definitely prioritized movement in my day. My dog and I were walking 2 to 3 miles a day. If I had any free time, I would try to be outside. And I really stuck to a really good workout routine that has been really fun. I've never really been a gym person, but now you can find me at the YMCA all the time. And one thing that has been instrumental to my mental health was the addition of my therapist, who I love talking about. Um, I love her so much. She has been such a important part and piece of this journey. I do think starting my work with her last year in December 2023, processing some of the things that I process as a human individual, led me to that point to be like, okay, what else do I want with my life? Like I have this nice secure job. It's not necessarily where I see myself or what I want to be doing in 5 to 10 years, being a technical accounting consultant. So being able to work through her on that work, have somebody really in charge of my mental health, really pushed me to start seeing different things and wanting different things for myself. And having her during that transition was also great because not every day has been amazing. There's definitely days where you expect something and it doesn't work out the way that you expect it. Us high achievers, sometimes that can be a little hard, but having someone there to help you kind of step back and look at things from the outside or just kind of remind you of all the progress that you've done has made this honestly one of the best times of my life. I feel more confident than I have before, healthier than I ever have, and just really present, which I think is like a gift in itself. It's really easy to live in the past or live in the future, but to just be present in this moment in time takes quite a bit of work.
It does, and it takes a village. What you expressed here, it's you've done the work, but you've also reached out for help, and that's something that, out of pride, I know I personally have resisted a lot of that help, especially with therapy. I've recently started my own journey there, and it's amazing how much of a difference it makes. We tend to go to these coaches, to these professionals in time of need. What I'm excited about now is continuing with this, which seems like you're on the similar path here, where if it's so good in a time of need, imagine how amazing it is to have these resources when you're thriving. It's only going to catapult
Oh,
you to completely new
yeah.
heights. So that's amazing. I love that you're seeing this time period as such an impactful one, positively impactful one for you. I want to switch things a bit here. We're friends, so we've chatted before, and you have mentioned recently that you're exploring maybe jumping into startup land, which makes me really happy. That's all I've ever been involved in. But it is crazy. It's a crazy environment. Startups, by definition, you're building things that are not there yet. So you're the analogy is you're building the plane as you're falling down the cliff. So I always like to ask people, what about startups makes you excited about the possibility of joining one, and what type of role do you think you would thrive in within the startup ecosystem?
Yeah, I would say I once kind of looking back into my experience and being in the audit world at Deloitte, working for publicly traded companies that were massive in size, having these tight government deadlines that there was just no way we could not meet them. I feel like I watched both from the partner level, CFO, CEOs to my own manager levels, solve fires within fires within fires and do pull things out of literally thin air to get these projects done. And I do feel like there's a little bit of a similarity in that environment. It is, it was a really big team. It's a really big company. So a lot of a different space there, but just the coming together of the audit team and being like, we have 100 problems. How do we categorize this? What do we fix first? Who attacks what? And what can we do to solve it? And being in those really big companies and really big teams as an extroverted person who lived through COVID and went on this online remote space, I want to be in a smaller, closer team environment. I want to work hand in hand with someone building something. Um, I want to be someone's right hand person with all the skills that I have to offer. I do thrive in an environment that's like slightly with a little bit of chaos. I think that keeps me engaged and present. I think sometimes the redundancy of accounting was a little bit what might have lost my attention here and there. Um, and, in an ideal world, I could start somewhere and do, say, bookkeeping at an entry level pay. I mean, I know I'm worth a lot, but I want to just start somewhere from the ground up. Prove myself to someone, be able to tack on more responsibilities as I see needed, being able to offer, do you need help in marketing, help in reaching out to people, content creation? Do you want to go talk to investors? I've worked on hundreds of investor presentations in the past now 5 years through my consulting. And when I worked at VF Corp, I would love to be thrown tasks that people just don't know how to do and be able to figure those out. I couldn't find something any more exciting. I did, I mentioned that I did the switch to accounting, and I had gone into journalism. I switched to accounting junior spring semester. So I had a year and one summer to get in all of my accounting classes. So I do love a tight deadline. I do love to prove myself wrong. I do love to prove other people wrong because when I said that I was switching to accounting, everyone, my family, the college advisors, career advisors, friends were like, what are you doing? What? One, that's crazy. Two, you're not going to read. Three, you're not going to do it. Four, you're not going to have the time to do it and get all the hours while working 2 to 3 jobs in college. And I was like, watch me do it. So I do thrive in an unknown environment and challenges. And I think in the startup world, there is a lot of communication that needs to happen because you're just, like you said, trying to fix the plane as it's falling. Um, and I would love to throw my personality into an environment like that.
Oh my God, you said all the right things there. It's if I could send a PSA to any venture studio or any startup out there would be after hearing this, like you should go recruit the young accountants. Like that is, I mean, so many of the things from investor pitching to high stress, tight deadlines, and over communication. There's no such thing in startups. You want to be over communicative. So, my goodness, yeah. When I originally asked the question, I didn't know what to expect. But yes, I now my what I'm wondering is what took you so long? Why didn't you enter startup land sooner? So that's amazing. Anyone would be super lucky to have something, someone like this on their team. So all right, cool. We're in this exploring phase. You're entertaining a completely different world to what you've been used to. If you had a blank canvas in front of you and you could paint your ideal life, work-wise, personal-wise, in 5 years, what would that life look like?
Ooh, I think I'd definitely be somewhere back in Florida. An ideal sort of day in life for me would be, I mean, waking up early how I always do, having my time for walking and exercising in the morning, and then really dedicating that day from 9 to 5, 6, 7, whatever it is my work day could be. I want it, to be dynamic, to be able to fit into my lifestyle. Um, I would love to be growing with a startup company that I might have started with this year and be at a different stage there. I don't necessarily want a title, or I'm not looking for a specific role. There's not like anything ego driven besides being able to be a part of a team that I am close to, that I can contribute to, that I feel comfortable spending my time day in and day out. And then having that other aspect of my life, being able to live presently with my loved ones. Hopefully I have a family by then, and my dog is still with us, running around in the backyard, being active somewhere in Florida. I want to balance both my personal life with my career in a way that I know is possible, that I've seen other people do. So yeah, there's no like title or certain amount of money that I want by then. I'm just driven by being able to contribute and feeling good about that contribution. And there is like a third part of me that would love to have something community based, whether it's like a small art gallery, somewhere where I can give back to the community, where like my Saturdays and Sundays, if I'm not with the family or working, I can work on my new art gallery of like local Hispanic artists or whatever the case may be. I need to throw that in there as also one of my 5 year goals, because I know that I definitely want to continue in the creative space in whatever way I can.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And the creative only aids the other aspects too. As I mean, I want to go back actually. What you mentioned, I didn't realize that you had done accounting within the last pretty much like quarter of your university life. Um, so it kind of ties into it. I mean, it makes sense that you had done a more creative career and then, making the switch, now wanting to prove everyone wrong. Like it all makes sense looking back. I'm sure when you were back then, it didn't. I'm sure when you've been at some of these previous job positions where you may have felt stuck, maybe things didn't make so much sense then. So now with the knowledge that you have and hindsight being 2020, if you could go back to a moment where you did feel stuck in your career, what would you tell yourself then with what you know now?
I wouldn't want to change any timeline, but the one piece of advice I would give to myself is to really lean in and listen to my gut and not to try and suit that with any outside help as far as things to distract you to take your mind off of what's happening. Um, I would try and find answers in other people, in distractions, and things that really weren't aligned with myself. And I wish I would have just kind of listened to my gut feeling a little sooner and kind of pushed that feeling and dug into that feeling. But I have a lot of compassion for my young self because I know the work that I've done, and at least in the last year through therapy, there are just some things that I wouldn't have been comfortable doing or wouldn't have trusted myself to do. Um, and I think I would tell myself at that point, like, it takes time, it's coming. If you can't make a big change right now, um, it is going to work out, even though I don't have the answers right now and I don't know what my next job will be, although it's, manifesting it in here. I just do have faith based on everything that I've been through that it's going to work out. So I would love to keep her in that mindset too. Because sometimes I would lose that and I'd get a little bit all over the place, confused and sad when I was in my younger years about like, whoa, what am I doing? What's happening? Why did I make these decisions? Why am I doing this? Looking back on it now, I'm like, okay, everything makes sense. But in that moment, it's hard to trust yourself. So I would tell her that it takes time. Nothing happens overnight.
Patience, that's something that we'll develop, I guess, as we get older. When we're young, we want everything to happen yesterday. So that's very sound advice, not just to your past self, but to me and hopefully to anyone that's listening to this. Awesome. So you made some comments that you want to move back to Florida. So I actually haven't asked you. Well, I know where you live, but where are you living right now? Tell the world, and when do you see yourself making a move? Because that's probably happening somewhat soon.
Yeah, I live in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, so it's like a nice little city tucked in between Charlotte and Raleigh. And there are plans to move to the Tampa St. Pete area around June, which is kind of guiding my need for probably a remote job now. I would like something in person. If there is something that, a year or two down the line, a company wants me to move in and we have to move states, then that would be something that we would consider. Um, since we have put a lot of focus on my partner's career, it's kind of like my time to shine. So I think if there is an opportunity that I wouldn't want to give up, that would be possible down the line. But I've been here for about 5 years now. I left Florida when I was 22. So it's been about 8 years. I mean, I haven't been back to Miami since I was 18, living in Miami. And yeah, I miss the sun and the sand and the beach and being close to people that I love. It's been quite a bit of a journey moving to a brand new small city compared to all the big cities that I've lived in before. And at first, I was like, well, this experience is crazy, but it did teach me a lot about being still and being calm and living a little bit of a different life. So I've really appreciated the lessons and the experience that I had out here in North Carolina. But we will be moving to St. Pete in June, for the time being, but obviously open to, a remote job that can possibly go into in person later down the line.
Love it. Certainly a little biased being here in the Tampa Bay area. I can say firsthand there's a thriving startup community here, and it seems to be growing on a daily basis. So I know I'm personally connected to a few of those folks. Hopefully this reaches them because again, it would be a wonderful asset. So perfect. Ria, thank you so much for your time. You've been more than generous, and thank you for opening up and really letting people know that it's things do get better, and
Yep.
sometimes you just need patience, and if you trust your instinct, even if it means stepping out of your comfort zone, it is always going to be for the best. So I can't thank you enough for sharing that. Um, some last minute things here. How can people reach you? What's the best way for folks to contact you if they want to have you join their team?
Yeah, I mean, if you're watching this on LinkedIn, you can definitely connect with me there and add me and message me. Other than that, I do go by my full name on Gmail. So it is Maria B. Mendez Henning at gmail.com. And we can like link that below to be able to reach me. And yeah, I'm available. You can ask Danny for my information. And before I go, Daniel, I did want to say one of the pieces that I missed on mentioning was how important my support system, besides my therapist, I mean, my friends, people like you, Lauren, all of my best friends who've offered their time, advice, their ear during this transition, my partner, my family, this was a big change for me. And without everybody involved, the village, like you mentioned, I don't think I would be in this specific spot with how good my mental health is and the changes that I'm trying to make, the things that I'm trying to achieve. So I did want to give a small shout out to my friends and the people who love me and the people part of my village.
It really that can't be emphasized enough, and I can say the same to you. It's having gone through a similar experience recently, having having that coach,
Support.
having that support system. It's there's no there's nothing that gets even close to that. So I'm thankful that you brought that up because we do tend to take it for granted sometimes. Not just in times of need, but it's when we're in our best. Who do we want to share it with? Those folks too, and that's what makes life meaningful. So thank you for being part of my village, and I can't wait for you guys to move here to the Tampa Bay area. So I'm really looking forward to that and to playing with Winston every day. Winston is her amazing dog, which we may or may not link a few pictures of him in the comments. Awesome. Thank you so
Amazing.
much.
Thank you, Daniel. This is awesome. Thank you for creating this space. This is really unique, and I feel like we need a little bit more of this on LinkedIn.
Alrighty. Well, on that note, see you all next time.